Thank you, Mark. Hi, friends. Really grateful to practice with you all today. Let me just change it so I can see your faces and not my own face. Okay, much better. Thank you, Mark. Thank you all. So wherever you are coming from, let's just take a couple of minutes now to settle in and transition from your work day, your errands. So you're invited to find a comfortable seat in your chair, on your couch, wherever you are, allowing your body to be held up, feet on the floor, your tush connected to the seat beneath you. Allowing the weight of your body to be supported. And I'll invite you to just let go for this time that we have together of any to-dos or concerns, as much as best as you can. Really to create this little space of Shabbat here in the middle of the day. So finding your breath, allowing the air to enter in your body, and fill yourself up with that cleansing air. So you're welcome. If your eyes are closed, you're welcome to keep them closed and listen as I offer some words of Torah today, or you can open them. As Mark mentioned, this is the last day of the month of Av before we begin to transition into Rosh Chodesh Elul tonight. And I want to share a teaching that is shared a lot in this week in this little corner of our Jewish world from Rabbi Alan Liu's book on Parshat Shoftim. And I'm going to share my screen, so for those who want to see can read along with me. So it's taken from the first verse of Parshat Shoftim, the Torah portion for this week. Shoftim v'shotrim titen lecha b'chol she'arecha. Judges and officers you shall appoint for yourselves in all your gates. And a 17th century commentary from the Shla, Rabbi Yeshayahu Isaiah Horowitz, takes this commandment to place officers and judges at your gates and takes it inward. And he writes that there are 7 gates, 7 windows, as it were, into the soul. The 2 eyes, the 2 ears, the 2 nostrils, and the mouth. Everything that passes into our consciousness must enter through one of these gates. So pay attention so that these gates do not let anything disgusting or obscene pass through. I'm reminded in this teaching, this is really a teaching of pure mindful awareness. I think one of the clearest instructions for mindfulness that I've ever heard is this is a practice of paying attention to paying attention. Can we bring awareness to what we're taking in the world, in whatever senses, whatever faculties we have, not just, as he mentions, in what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we taste, but also our thoughts and our emotions too, in some ways, are just sensations, just sort of collections of material that are rising up in the moment, entering through our consciousness, and then passing away again. And I'm reminded in this teaching about these gates or these windows that we are far more permeable and far more affected by the world and the circumstances around us than I often would like to admit. And he uses strong language here in this teaching of not letting disgusting or obscene things pass through, which would really suggest putting up a very strong filter against the world. But I think the wisdom that he's trying to offer is that don't think that you can walk through the world shielded from everything. I know that when I'm in a noisy or overstimulating place, that is going to leave an imprint and a content on that kind of content is going to leave an imprint on my soul, on the way I relate to others, the way I relate to myself. So can I really take good care to pay attention to what's coming in through all of those senses? I'm really noticing this now too, because I have an 8-month-old baby whose name is Rabbi, and his senses, particularly his sense of touch, is really becoming very, very alive. So we took him to the park the other day, and his feet, we just placed him down on the AstroTurf, and it's like, oh my goodness, you feel every little blade of grass. Everything is just so alive with sensation. And I think as we age and the newness abates, we often sort of dull in that relationship to the world and lose that sense of radical amazement. So in our practice today, I'm going to invite us to really pay attention to beauty, to look inward first and begin to notice with each of our senses that we are blessed with. And particularly for those of us who have sight, when we close our eyes, I know all my other senses become so heightened. So how do we kind of crank up the awareness a little more as we begin to enter this month of Elul? So let's sit together for 10, 15 minutes or so, and I'll close with a little story and with a nigun toward the end. But as you're settling into your seat, the invitation for practice today is paying attention to all of those sense gates, maybe even just picking one sense to really devote yourself to. Perhaps sound, or the tactile sense, feelings in your body, touch, maybe even the tastes that are in your mouth left over from a meal, or the sensation of saliva in your mouth. Just picking one sense gate to see what is true, what is beautiful here in this moment. If you notice that your mind has wandered off, it's just a gentle invitation to bring yourself back into your body, back into your senses, grounding in this moment with the breath and the body. Begin to close with the words of this chant. Shiviti Havaya Lenegdi Tamid. I place Havaya, being, becoming the divinity of that which is before me at all times. A reminder in the Shabiti to always strive to be attentive to that presence which is in front of us always. Shiviti Havaya Leneti Tami Shiviti Havaya Leneti Tami Havaya 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 Ahava 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 Havaya 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 Ahava Ahava Ahava. So before I hand it back over to Mark to close with Mourner's Kaddish, I want to share with you a little passage that I have loved for years on this focus of perceiving our world with a lens toward beauty. So this is from the writer Martha Beck, and I'll share my screen too if you'd like to read along with me, or you can just listen. This is from her book, Expecting Adam. My freshman year at Harvard, during one of my endless runs along the Charles River, I saw something glinting in the grass. It was small and pink, about the size of a pecan, and it shone in the late afternoon sunlight. I knew right away what it was because I'd spent hours looking for things just like it during childhood hikes in the Rocky Mountains. It was a piece of rose quartz, a semi-precious stone that is supposed to symbolize compassion and friendship. When I found the chunk of quartz in Cambridge, I felt the same small thrill of delight and discovery I'd experienced as a rock-hounding child. It lay there in the emerald grass like a tiny, rosy, translucent egg. Naturally, I stopped to pick it up. As soon as I touched it, I knew something was wrong. Instead of being heavy and cool and slick like any self-respecting piece of quartz, it was very light and rather crumbly. I hefted it in my palm, looking at it more closely, and realized that this beautiful object I'd picked up was nothing more than a chunk of styrofoam. I dropped it instantly, revolted. Instead of a lovely product of the natural world, I'd been holding onto a piece of pollution. I wiped my hand on my t-shirt and I looked at the styrofoam in disgust. As I continued my run, it occurred to me that the piece of styrofoam hadn't changed at all between the time that I first saw it, when I was so drawn to its beauty, and the moment I realized what it was and was disgusted by its ugliness. The only change was inside my head. I had assigned 2 different labels to that small pink object, and those labels, not the thing itself, had determined my reaction to it. This was enough to make me wonder if many of the things I had reviled as ugly might not in fact be beautiful, if I might be robbing myself of beauty with my own cognitive prejudice. I finished my run just in time to show up at one of the dormitory kitchens to work as a dining hall grunt. My job included mopping floors and washing dishes and ladling out food to dorm residents. On the way to work, I decided to try an experiment. For that one evening, I would resist assigning any labels to my classmates as they filed through the dinner line. I would try to look at them without preconception, the way I had first looked at the styrofoam in the grass. Of course, this is nearly impossible, but I did make an effort for a few minutes. After that, I had to stop because I was so overcome by the beauty of every person in that dining hall that my eyes kept filling with tears. I think maybe that's one reason we screen out so much loveliness. If we saw people as they really are, the beauty would overwhelm us. So may we see with eyes toward beauty everyone we meet. Thank you for your practice today, and I'll hand it back over to Mark.
Lauren, thank you so much. Really, such a beautiful practice. Such a deeply moving piece you just shared. We seal the practice as we do every day, friends, by offering an opportunity for those of you who are mourning, observing yard sites, to recite the Mourner's Kaddish. For those who are not reciting Kaddish, it's an opportunity for you to stay present for those who are and offer your support and compassion. So if you're reciting Kaddish, please, if you'd like, put the name or names of those you're honoring in the chat box now or after you recite Kaddish. Thanks to Jordan Pollock, who's holding our text space, for sharing the words on the screen. And I invite you, if you are joining the Kaddish, please join me by rising in body or in spirit, and you can unmute this time. Yitgadal, V'kadash Shemei Rabbah, Yalma Divra Chirutei, V'yamich Malchutei, V'chayei V'yomei V'chayei D'chol Beit Yisrael, V'agalat Zman Karim, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba, Me'olam Yitbarach, Yishtabach, Ba'ad, Yitnaseh, Yitzhadar, Yitalel, Shmei Kedusha, Yichu, Elam, Yikol, Birchata, B'chata, B'nechemata, B'na'ama, Amen. Hey, Shlama Rabba Mishmaya, B'chaim Aleinu V'Yakol Yisrael, Amen. Oseh Shalom B'Ramav, Yaseh Shalom Amen.
Amen.
Friends, thanks so much for joining us today. Thanks to our teacher, Rabbi Lauren Henderson of Congregation Orach Hadash in Atlanta, for leading us and teaching us so beautifully today. Thanks, Lauren. Thanks to Jordan Pollock for holding our space beautifully as well. And if you're leaving us now, we hope you'll join us tomorrow, Rosh Chodesh Elul. And we will be led, as we usually are, on Rosh Chodesh by a representative from At the Well. It will be Jen Sadaka, the Jewish educator from At the Well, awaiting word on Sarah Waxman, who was awaiting the birth of their child. And I don't have any news yet, but hopefully tomorrow can report on some news about that. But we'll look forward to welcoming Jen Sadaka, who'll be leading us in practice for Rosh Chodesh. And on Friday, I'll be leading us to sit into Shabbat together and close out this week as we go into Shabbat Shoftim and enter the month of Elul. So if you're leaving us now, we hope to join us then. If you're not, you're welcome to stay on just to continue to sit with that teaching and practice, or join us for conversation with Lauren about the teaching. You can, as always, put your comments, reflections, questions in the chat. And if it's a question, if you can preface it by writing question in all caps, that's helpful. And I'm also going to put in the chat a link for those who might be interested in the song that Rabbi Lauren ended with, Shiviti. That's a version by Nava Tehillah, the community in Israel. And there's a link to their recording of that there. Lauren, thanks. That was just beautiful. And that was that last piece. Oh my goodness, so moving.
No, I heard that from Rabbi James Jacobson Maisels on a retreat many years ago, and it has stuck with me ever since.
Well, thanks for passing it. Thanks for passing it along. So I wanted to start there, actually, if that's okay. It related to Rabbi Lou's teachings in the book, which was really the focus for those involved in the Shofar project, but really for all of us closing out the month of Av, which is this theme of letting the walls fall down. In this case, the walls of judgment, preconception, our assumptions. It's talked about the Torah portion invites us. Well, invites us to set judges in those gates of senses and faculties that you let us in so beautifully. And really the question is like, what's the nature of that judge? So that story, what's her name? Martha Beck?
Martha Beck, yeah.
Yeah, Martha Beck, about noticing the judge that was sitting in the gate about that experience of the stone that turns out to be styrofoam.
Yes.
The person, each person who comes in. And then at the end, you were, that the story was very much focused on her judgment of others. And you give us a beautiful blessing for doing that and why it's hard to do that, right? That what occurred to me is it's also extremely hard for us to do that for ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have our own preconceptions about ourselves, our own judgments about ourselves. So I wanted to invite you to, reflect on this, because I think for many of us, both are difficult. It's hard to let go of those judgments.
Yes.
And preconceptions. And I love that she said it. She acknowledged it's hard, can't do it, but even just doing it a little bit had an enormous impact. So I just wanted to invite you to elaborate on that, if you would, about maybe why it's so challenging for us, and maybe particularly challenging for some of us with regard to ourselves. Alan Liu takes it eventually in the direction of we're entering a season that's really a season. We think about it as a season of harsh judgment. Many, perceive it that way, but in truth, it's actually about engaging in judgment encompassed with compassion.
Yes. Yes. This really feels true for me, and I think it's true for so many people. So I'll just try to ground it in my own experience. I mean, I was noticing my husband and I were at a wedding last week and catching up with some friends that we hadn't seen in a long time, and they're asking me about how things were going. And I noticed that I had a sort of narrative about myself, and a really highly down on myself critical narrative of how I'm performing in my job and how I'm it's such a well-worn path. It's a story that I've told myself so many times before. Well, this happened and this happened and this happened. And as I was telling this story for the umpteenth time, thinking wait a second, I don't think I want to be telling this story anymore. I'm so tired of telling that same story. But in a way, I feel like the narrative, as self-critical as it was also a little bit self-protective, because as much as I can continue to tell that same story, then it really predicts the trajectory that I'm going to be on. Okay, well, I'm sort of circumscribed by this set of circumstances and these things that happen to me and these choices that I make. And then the path forward is very, very clear. But if I let go of that narrative, or I just hold it a little more lightly and say, well, maybe it's like that, but maybe it's not, then it's a little bit terrifying at first, because it just opens up this whole array of, okay, what might I actually see when I, when I sit down and try to move forward. And that's scary in its own way, but also a little bit freeing. So I don't know, that's just what occurred to me when you asked the question.
Yeah. Yes. I really appreciate that answer. There's a hard question from Lori, and Lori, appreciate this. I want to extend our prayers and to you and to, all those who are facing different challenges. So Lori wrote about looking for the lens of beauty as one sits bedside when someone is transitioning at someone's deathbed. So it's good. It's a good one to have a congregational rabbi here to respond to this. I'm thinking, Lauren, about thinking about what I often say at a funeral when somebody's doing kriya, the ritual of making a tear in the garment, and we say a blessing. When we recite a blessing, what I often say in that setting is, we acknowledge the paradox of the pain of loss, irreparable loss, because the tear never can be fully fixed, but we say a blessing. It's a traditional Jewish practice to say a blessing. And for me, it is about like looking for the blessing of that person's life at that time. But I'm wondering about what's your response to that? Like, how do we deal with that balance of seeing basically, a teaching about like looking for beauty in everything, even that which is, unpleasant or,
Yeah. Well, first, I just want to say, Lori, I'm sending so much love to you as you are sitting by your mother-in-law's bedside. I've done this with my congregants a number of times, and with remember sitting with my own father as he was dying a few years ago. And sometimes I just want to say from the outset, sometimes there's nothing beautiful to be found in the moment. And sometimes death can be absolutely excruciating and painful, and trying to look for a beautiful thing or a silver lining can feel just horribly cruel. So I just want to say that from the outset. And I'll just share from my own experience that in the case of, sitting with my own father, once he was sedated, there was a moment of, I would say, what I would call beauty in no longer struggling against the reality of what is, and that thinking about that blessing that we say with the tearing of the ribbon or the clothing, Baruch Dayan Hamet. I often say too at funerals, this is true, and maybe beauty is the wrong word, but I have found a sense of peace and, okay, I'm here in this moment. This is happening. I'm no longer running from it. And there can be this profound opening to even the most painful part of that reality, when that struggle is loosened a bit. And if Lori, if that feels accessible for you, I want to wish you blessing in that accompaniment, because what you're doing is beautiful. Oh, you're muted now, Mark.
There's also a question about, and a few questions really about like, we're talking about these gates as senses or faculties. Well, why are certain things not included or not included? And I've really appreciated that you expanded it to talk about like faculties, thought, emotion, also as these kind of gateways. So there's no reason, I think, why there's any limitation to like, why is that not one of the gates? The hands, all the different aspects of ourselves, which are our interface, right, with the world. Okay, I'm just scrolling through. I don't know if you see any other questions. Harris had this thought about even if we can't completely stop the habit of judging, can we at least catch ourselves doing it and stop in mid-course? Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, here I go again. Oh, look at that.
Right. And even if, I guess the point here is that even if we can substitute something for the judgment, at least maybe we can temper the judgment or catch ourselves and just notice, wow, I'm really judging. I'm really, making an assumption here about something.
Yeah, I know. Even when the sit was happening, I noticed, here's the train of thought that happened. My laptop is a little older and the fan was whirring and whirring. And so I thought, can people hear that? I wonder if it's distracting. Maybe I need to get a new laptop. I wonder when they're going on sale, and like got all the way down this train of like thinking about making this huge purchase, and then kind of had this moment of waking up like, oh, all of that just came from the sound of hearing a fan going, which actually was quite pleasant. And I like finally just, okay, stop at mid-course. Great.
Okay, and there's also just practically speaking, I see people are really interested in seeing that Martha Beck piece. And I'm seeing that it's an excerpt in her book, Expecting Adam, A True Story of Birth, Rebirth, and Everyday
Yes.
Magic. So I don't know, well, if we can find a way to get a copy of what you shared, that would be great. But looks like she is a wonderful resource in general as well.
For sure.
Okay. All right. Why don't we end it here, Lauren? Thank you so much. And thanks for sharing Rafi's Torah as well.
Of course. He's my best teacher.
Yeah, thank you for that, bringing in Rabbi Rafi for us today. That's a good, great gift. And friends, thanks so much for being with us today. Hope you have a beautiful day. I want to wish everyone a Chodesh Tov as we move into Elul tonight. And we very much look forward to sharing the journey through the month coming up beginning tomorrow. We have Jenna Sadaka of At the Well to lead us in practice. So many blessings, everyone.